again, to keep us in this type of in their normal tropes that the world, other ethnic groups around the world, Black diasporas will have us in this box of this deadbeat dad or any of these negative things. And so in my documentary, there's a brief piece of Oprah talking about this myth of the deadbeat dad. And so some of the other women, because it's an all women's cast speaking about fathers, because and the reason I did that was because um, women listen to women, and then sometimes we're not listened to, so it's going to look like we are just complaining or whatever. So I felt like having all women speak about this, and the idea came from listening to women speak about the importance of fathers, and then fathers not being able to see their children and the vindictiveness of the mothers and stuff. So when you say the marketing thing, I agree with almost everything you guys are saying, because it's an understood thing that you're going to keep promoting us as this, whatever negative, specifically the Black men.
So, I gotta ask you a question. So, do you notice it being different versus like someone getting married to that woman versus them just having a child? Like, or is it this result the same?
But what do you mean as far as the dynamics of the relationships or
Or when it
children
comes to the
dynamics?
kids after the relationship is done? Like, are people who were once married better at like that kind of parenting, co-parenting, or people who probably always co-parenting in
Well,
some sense or better?
that's a great question. I haven't
Oh, okay.
looked into any research around
Oh,
that
okay.
or anything. The differences between single uh, people who are single versus people who are married, and then how they, because that I would have, without doing any study, I would think maybe the married couple, but I was married, so
Yeah, yeah. That's why
so
I ask you. Mhm,
I don't,
mhm.
I don't know, but that would be a good, a good study.
Write
Um,
it down. Let me know.
you know what I mean? Because then sometimes we got to look at the economic factors.
Correct.
So there's a lot of things that will have to come into play. We do these studies, man. They could be skewed and biased, and you want to try to capture all angles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that I would assume the married couple would be better, but I can't really say or kind of speculate on that.
Then we would have to go on age next, because like younger
Yeah,
people
yeah,
versus older people, because
yep.
younger people have the tendency to reflex to whatever social programming they have, and as you get older, you
Oh,
tend to
yeah.
question that programming.
Oh,
I would hope you
absolutely.
do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I want to say so far, like, of course, we're all going to disagree with certain things,
Correct.
just in life in general. But, I haven't disagreed with anything I've heard so far. So,
And
it
abalone
is.
pizzas?
Yeah, but I don't know. It's always
What are y'all talking about?
well, you came in late, so um
Well, y'all niggas is always late. So what was y'all talking about?
no, 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 no. This is important. We have a guest, and he has a movie called, what was the movie called, you guys? A documentary. It's not a movie. Documentaries are movies.
For mothers who won't let fathers see their children.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, that's why y'all wanted me
My,
here?
my, my
No,
bad,
I mean,
fellas.
We ask
Oh,
you every week, bro.
yeah.
Yeah, my
mothers
bad,
that won't let
fellas.
their
You're fine.
fathers,
No,
the father
it
their
happens,
child see the
Professor
child?
Noir.
Yes,
It happens.
Yeah,
yes.
they're evil.
Okay.
There's no speculation on it. No, I'm serious. They're evil.
Who's evil? Who? I was talking to
Oh,
some
he's
family
saying
members.
women who won't let their children see their father.
Well, I don't know, man. I should be disagreeing, but it's hard for me to disagree. I
Yeah,
mean,
you can't
so,
disagree with that. They're Satanists.
Well, no,
well,
They
no.
they
What you're saying is it's
uh,
hard to disagree with something when someone has also wronged you, as Professor Noir was saying, because
yeah,
he said the same thing happened to him that happened to you. But
yeah,
now with multiple kids and messing up the relationships that he's been trying to have with the children.
yeah, and now,
yeah.
mind you, now, this is what I left out. Like, because a lot of times I've done a lot of interviews from other documentaries, just interviews in general, and sometimes, man, you leave out so many things, important things, right? And I've left out. So my first relation, I have one of my oldest son with a relationship that I had with a woman for about 7, 8 years, and then I was married. And I have 4 kids with the woman I was married with. We had a relationship for 12 years, married for 8. My marriage, when I was married, when say to you, she watched everything that I went through with the first daughter. Well, I mean, son. the first kid, basically, before we even had kids. All the stuff. I mean, she got fought the woman, all types of stuff because of the issues around the first baby mom who wouldn't let me see my son. We even went on stakeouts looking for my son. Like we went through so much um, trying to deal with my son and going to court, all of this stuff. And then when a long time later, we separate, and then she pulls the same thing. Watching me go through all of
Damn.
this stuff. Yeah,
That's what they do,
watching.
man. They
Yeah. So,
Satanists.
well, yeah. So when it comes to like these things, um, they just don't have a certain type of discernment, and it turns into a whole narcissistic type of thing. So it's not all of them because in the documentary I have sisters who never even went to court, who would not go to court at all. They would refuse that. So you have some sisters that understand these dynamics, but I would beg to differ that I would think it would be a high percentage, like 70, 80%, maybe even 90, that were, regular good women. And then the second any emotional instability hits, just turns into a whole vindictive, vitriolic thing. And it doesn't even matter if it's you did something bad or not. I just think once they get into this mode
Um,
emotionally.
Well, no, that was a great point to bring up because it
yeah,
does differ
we know that.
outside of the states.
Yeah.
Correct. We
And
talk about that a lot, actually.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Especially West African brothers and
yeah.
Muslim. Nah, they not about to play that. Like, I mean
Not at all.
that's
There's
that's
something.
that's that's a non-starter right there.
Not at all. Don't doesn't really exist in those
No,
cultures.
no,
Yeah,
it
So
doesn't.
even
But
Asian
Reed,
societies, none of that.
you're trying to take this in another direction, but along the same lines.
yeah, exactly. So
The
here
success rate is higher out there too, ain't it?
it's a success rate of relationships.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Armstead did. Welcome to the
Um,
podcast.
okay, and
Been here
see
for a minute.
again, that's Pew Research or whatever data that off the top that I won't have.
Yeah.
I think I will. You got to kind of look into that because I try not to make I'll make statements based off my feeling theories, things I've read and understood, but the specificity of those dynamics definitely got to hit Pew Research or here Bureau of Labor and Statistics if it's national. You know what I mean? Global. I think Pew has that globally. I think. So I don't know. I don't want to speak on that. I can give you what I think,
I mean,
but
without knowing much, we know that what's that divorce called when you just divorce because you felt like it? That's that's a Western thing.
that's all
No
that. Yeah,
fault
yeah.
divorces. The
Nah,
the
not no fault. They
main and
call
the
it
end.
amicable differences
Don't need
or
no research there. Don't need no
irreconcilable
research
differences.
there.
Right.
Yeah,
Irreconcilable differences.
don't need
Yeah,
no
yeah,
research.
that ain't gonna work out there.
Yeah, and that's Kramer versus Kramer. They say art imitated life, life imitated art. So Kramer versus Kramer is a film that came out in the '80s that because blacks wasn't divorcing like that, but we tend to find or follow what Westerners or Europeans do, and we kind of become them and become that whether we know it or not.
Correct.
So Kramer versus Kramer comes out, and that is like the beginnings of this divorce type of situation. It's a lot of these things are happening in social society and social norms, but then uh, films or other elements will play a role in our social, how we move socially. And some point to that. Like, I hate to keep going because sometimes we'll think this is white Western theories and sociologists, but sometimes you can put some stuff together and say, all right, that makes sense. And the second these things get put out there, society will start to gravitate to it consciously and subconsciously. So, there's a lot of things I could point to, but they say Kramer versus Kramer was the beginning stages of white Europeans getting divorced and the women trying to have power dynamics in the courtrooms and stuff like that, and that was shifting. Of course, you have women's rights in the 40s and 50s and all that kind of stuff, and then sex movement by women in the 60s also.
But
But that Kramer versus Kramer in the
Oh,
80s shifted a lot of things.
I would say that it's. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was
Two
listening.
things. Um, well, earlier you said that. Well, this is, was maybe too far to call back. But earlier you said it was that some women may have a bad understanding or something along those lines, and then the other ones are just genuinely good women. I think that both sides have an understanding. It's just one is willing to take advantage of the situation. to make sure that they come
Exactly.
out on top.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily
Yeah.
whether or not they do understand it; it's whether or not they have the moral fabric to hold something higher
Yeah.
than their own personal needs. Like you said, the narcissist.
Yeah.
On the Kramer versus Kramer thing. Sorry, but
Yeah. No, I agree. And society dictates that. Society dictates that. So that's what I think. I think society dictates that.
I agree
I
that
agree with that.
society dictates it. And I think our society has created a crush, especially Western society, a
Hmm.
crush to destroy black men
Hmm.
specifically, but men in general. Because I tell them all
Hmm.
the time, it's not just black men who go through this with not being able to see their kids. It's white men. I've been in so many groups where
Yeah.
white men are going through this, Asian men are
Hmm.
going through this. It is Western society that
Exactly.
wants to crush men for whatever reason, right?
Hmm.
And but in the black community specifically, which is unique, you have the welfare system, you have the crack epidemic, you have um, uh,
The welfare was not
what are
unique
they
to
called?
black people.
Subsidies? No, it's not unique. It's the welfare system, right? Man can't be in the household. So white people
Oh, that
use
one. Okay,
welfare.
that's fair.
Yeah, white people use welfare. They use trust to hide their money, and then they take advantage of welfare as if they don't have any money, right? That's a lot of what's going on in the white community. Secret trust to flex the system so they can get free housing, so they can just build wealth. In our community, welfare was presented as a way to get the man out of the household, the crack
Yeah.
epidemic,
Yep.
along with the idea of, you don't need a man. The
Yep.
government can take care of you. The government can be your man. And then that blew up. And now most of our black women, I won't say all anymore. I'll say most because there's some that don't put their man on child support. But I think that's a whole nother
That's a very
damn
small.
coin,
That's a small
small
community,
subset.
but everything
But
you're saying is stated by the women. All of that. They talk about. That's what I'm saying. Again, it's a shameless plug for the doc, right? For the documentary, but the women speak on this, and they talk about. And then there's a small segment when we talk about the welfare to work. I have a small clip. Are you guys familiar with Claudine, the film Claudine?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
no, I'm
yeah,
not. Tell me a story.
all right. So there's a film that came out back in the day with like James Earl Jones, and I can't think of the other really big name actress that's in that film, but it talks about a family, a woman that has a relationship with a man, and she already has kids. But back then, you couldn't have the man. There's the man in the household rule that we talk about in the film, or not we. The film is an all women's. The film is an all women's. Like I said, narrative. Diane Carroll. That was the name I couldn't think of. Diane Carroll. But it's an all women's narrative, and they make all of these points. So I talk about my little story, the first 5 minutes, and then the rest is all women talking about that. And so they briefly talk. Everything you mentioned is discussed by the women in the film.
Well,
In regards welfare
let
to
me ask you
work,
this
all of
question.
it. Yep.
Let me ask you this question. Was the milk situation the gay community and the propaganda around the gay community brought up? Because that has to do with it as well.
Yeah, like no, we didn't. They didn't speak about any of that. And it's. I think I only heard one person bring uh, that up, and then there's other dynamics around that. And I wanted them to be specific. And there's one. Put it like this: I interviewed like 20 sisters, and I had to cut it down to 8 in regards to the editing process. So there's one. That's probably 2 sisters I know that um, would talk about that. They didn't, but they are very versed on all of those things. There's 2 of them, but
Are they
they
married?
but uh, one is actually polygynously. She's I believe it's the I hate to call it second wife or all that stuff, but she's a wife. She's in a polygynous marriage. The other was married, but they have strong stances on anti-black rhetoric and culture as it applies to all dynamics. It was family. It doesn't
So,
matter. They're
so let me
clear
ask.
on all of that stuff.
So these women understand the problem and they still don't have a man. And it sounds like they
Whoa,
don't
whoa,
believe the
whoa,
shit they're saying.
Oh, one of
whoa,
them
whoa,
has a
whoa.
man
Started
No, no,
based
tagging
on
no,
what
other
he's saying.
bitches on the
She doesn't
Jesus.
have
no,
a
no.
man. She shares a man. That's not having a man.
No. People get into polygamous
Well,
relationships for a whole ton of
that's
issues.
a whole
We could go
different.
into
Yeah,
that a whole
that
nother
that
Right.
that's a
time
different.
frame.
He has a man. Yeah,
And
Exactly.
that
that's just something you don't believe
eh,
in.
well, that's
Correct.
something.